You wake up and immediately check your phone. Bad news from work. A critical comment on your social media. A friend who hasn't responded to your message. Your ex posting photos with someone new. Within 5 minutes of consciousness, your nervous system is flooded with stress hormones. Your mind starts racing through scenarios, analyzing problems, planning responses. You haven't even gotten out of bed, and you're already emotionally exhausted. This is the modern condition, caring about everything all the time, to the point where caring becomes a form of self-destruction. But what if there was another way? What if you could learn to selectively disengage from the things that drain you without becoming cold or disconnected? What if you could master the psychological skill that ancient philosophers called strategic indifference? The ability to care deeply about what matters while remaining untouchable by what doesn't. This isn't about becoming emotionally numb or withdrawing from life. This is about developing sophisticated emotional intelligence that allows you to invest your care where it creates value while protecting yourself from the psychological damage of caring about things beyond your control. The difference between people who thrive despite life's difficulties and those who are constantly overwhelmed isn't that they have easier lives. It's that they've learned the art of strategic indifference, and this skill can be taught, practiced, and mastered. Why do some people remain calm in situations that would devastate others? What psychological mechanisms allow certain individuals to maintain inner peace while still being engaged and compassionate? And how can you develop this capability without losing your humanity or your ability to connect with others? The answers will change not just how you handle problems, but how you experience life itself. The psychology of caring. Too much. Before understanding strategic indifference, you need to understand why most people care too much about the wrong things, and how this pattern develops into a source of chronic psychological distress. The tendency to care excessively isn't a character flaw or a sign of weakness. It's often the result of psychological conditioning that begins in childhood and gets reinforced throughout life by cultural messages, social expectations, and traumatic experiences that teach you that everything is potentially threatening and requires your constant attention. Children who grew up in unpredictable environments often develop what psychologists call hypervigilance, a nervous system state where you're constantly scanning for potential problems, threats, or sources of rejection. This hypervigilance can persist into adulthood as a tendency to care intensely about other people's moods, opinions, and reactions, even when those things have no real impact on your life. Cultural conditioning also plays a role. Many people are raised with messages that equate caring with virtue, that good people worry about others, that responsible people stress about potential problems, that successful people are always concerned about their reputation and performance. These messages create a psychological framework where not caring feels morally wrong, even when the caring is causing significant stress without producing any positive outcomes. You might recognize logically that worrying about your ex-partner's new relationship serves no purpose, but emotionally, it feels wrong to simply stop caring about it. Social media amplifies this tendency by creating artificial intimacy with hundreds or thousands of people whose lives, opinions, and dramas would have been completely irrelevant to your ancestors. Your brain wasn't designed to care about this many people, or to process this much emotional information. But modern technology floods you with far more opportunities to care than your nervous system can handle healthily. The result is what researchers call care fatigue, a state of emotional exhaustion that comes from investing psychological energy in too many people and situations. Care fatigue doesn't just feel bad, it actually impairs your ability to care effectively about the people and situations that genuinely matter. When you're emotionally drained from caring about everything, you have less energy available for the relationships and goals that could actually benefit from your attention. You might find yourself too exhausted to be present with close friends because you've spent your emotional resources worrying about acquaintances, social media drama, or global problems you can't influence. Understanding the psychology of excessive caring reveals that the problem isn't your capacity for care. It's your lack of boundaries around where and how you direct that care. Your emotional system is like a bank account. When you spend indiscriminately, you end up broke when you need resources for things that actually matter. Strategic indifference is the skill of emotional budgeting. Consciously allocating your care toward people and situations where it can make a positive difference while withdrawing it from areas where it only creates stress without producing value. This doesn't mean becoming selfish or uncaring. It means becoming strategic about your care so that you can care more effectively where it counts, while protecting yourself from the psychological damage of caring about things beyond your control or influence. The neuroscience of emotional regulation. Strategic indifference works because it leverages specific brain mechanisms that regulate emotional responses. Understanding these mechanisms helps explain why some approaches to not caring work, while others backfire, and how to develop sustainable emotional regulation skills. The key brain region involved in strategic indifference is the prefrontal cortex, the area responsible for executive function, decision-making, and emotional regulation. When your prefrontal cortex is active and well-regulated, you can observe your emotional responses without being controlled by them. But emotional regulation isn't just about suppressing feelings. Research shows that simple emotion suppression, trying to push down feelings without processing them, often increases stress and makes emotions more intense over time. Strategic indifference works differently by changing your relationship to emotions rather than eliminating them. The process involves what neuroscientists call cognitive reappraisal, consciously reframing situations in ways that naturally reduce emotional intensity. Instead of telling yourself not to care about your coworker's criticism, you might reframe the criticism as information about their stress level rather than a judgment of your worth. This reframing activates different neural pathways than suppression. Instead of using mental energy to fight against your emotions, you're using mental energy to understand situations from perspectives that naturally generate less emotional reactivity. Brain imaging studies show that people who are skilled at cognitive reappraisal show different patterns of neural activity when facing stressful situations. Their prefrontal cortex becomes more active, while their amygdala, the brain's alarm system, becomes less reactive. This creates the neurological foundation for remaining calm in situations that would typically trigger strong emotional responses. Another crucial mechanism involves what researchers call attentional control, the ability to consciously direct your focus toward or away from specific aspects of your experience. When you're skilled at attentional control, you can choose to focus on the aspects of difficult situations that are within your influence, while allowing your attention to naturally drift away from aspects that are beyond your control. This isn't about denial or avoiding reality. It's about recognizing that in any situation, there are multiple valid ways to focus your attention, and some of those ways support your psychological well-being, while others undermine it. For example, if you receive harsh criticism at work, you could focus on how unfair the criticism feels, how it reflects your boss's character, or how it might affect your career prospects. These focus points would naturally generate stress, anger, and anxiety. Alternatively, you could focus on what specific behaviors you could adjust based on the feedback, how this experience might help you develop resilience, or how this moment fits into the larger pattern of your professional development. These focus points would naturally generate curiosity, determination, and growth orientation. The neurological difference between these approaches is significant. The first approach activates stress response systems that impair learning and problem solving while increasing emotional distress. The second approach activates learning and adaptation systems that enhance performance while maintaining emotional stability. Strategic indifference trains your brain to automatically default toward focus points that support your well-being and effectiveness, while naturally diminishing attention to focus points that create suffering without producing value. This training happens through practice. Each time you consciously redirect your attention from unproductive focus points to productive ones, you strengthen neural pathways that make this redirection more automatic over time. Eventually, strategic indifference becomes a natural response rather than something you have to force. The Stoic foundation. The concept of strategic indifference has deep roots in Stoic philosophy, which provides both practical wisdom and psychological insights that remain remarkably relevant for modern mental health and emotional regulation. The Stoics understood that human suffering comes not from external events themselves, but from our judgments and reactions to those events. This insight forms the foundation for strategic indifference because it reveals that you have far more control over your emotional experience than you might realize. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher emperor, wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." This isn't just inspirational rhetoric, it's a precise description of how emotional regulation actually works neurologically. The Stoic practice of distinguishing between what is up to us versus what is not up to us provides a practical framework for strategic indifference. According to this framework, your thoughts, judgments, values, and responses are up to you, while other people's actions, natural events, and past occurrences are not up to you. This distinction creates clear guidelines for where to invest your care and concern. Things that are up to you deserve your full attention and effort because you can actually influence them. Things that are not up to you deserve acceptance and indifference because caring about them creates stress without producing positive change. Modern psychology has validated many Stoic insights through research on what psychologists call locus of control. People with an internal locus of control, who focus primarily on factors they can influence, tend to have better mental health, higher achievement, and greater life satisfaction than people with an external locus of control, who focus primarily on factors beyond their influence. The Stoic practice of negative visualization, imagining loss or difficulties before they occur, also provides a foundation for strategic indifference. By mentally rehearsing challenges and losses, you develop psychological resilience that allows you to remain calm when difficulties actually arise. This practice works because it reduces what psychologists call impact bias, the tendency to overestimate how much negative events will affect you and how long those effects will last. When you've mentally prepared for potential difficulties, they feel more manageable when they occur, and you're less likely to be overwhelmed by emotional reactions. The Stoic emphasis on virtue as the only true good provides another foundation for strategic indifference by creating clear priorities. When you know what you truly value, things like integrity, courage, wisdom, and compassion, it becomes easier to remain indifferent to things that don't serve those values, like social approval, material success, or other people's opinions. This clarity about values naturally reduces anxiety and stress because it eliminates internal conflict about what deserves your attention and care. Instead of trying to excel at everything and please everyone, you can focus your energy on living according to your deepest principles. But Stoicism also provides important warnings about the misuse of indifference. The goal isn't to become emotionally dead or to stop caring about anything. The goal is to care most about what you can control while maintaining appropriate perspective about everything else. Modern applications of Stoic principles need to account for insights from contemporary psychology about human needs for connection, growth, and meaning. Strategic indifference should enhance your ability to engage with life rather than withdrawal from it. Practical applications: when to care and when to let go. Developing strategic indifference requires practical wisdom about when caring serves you and when it becomes self-destructive. This wisdom develops through experience and conscious reflection, but certain guidelines can help you make better decisions about where to invest your emotional energy. The first guideline involves impact and influence. Care deeply about situations where you have both the ability to influence outcomes and where those outcomes significantly impact your life or the lives of people you're committed to supporting. Let go of caring about situations where you have little influence or where the outcomes don't meaningfully affect your life or values. This might mean caring intensely about your own performance at work while becoming indifferent to office politics that don't involve you. It might mean investing emotional energy in resolving conflicts with close family members while letting go of frustration about distant relatives' life choices. The second guideline involves time sensitivity. Care about problems that can be addressed through current action while becoming indifferent to problems that are either already resolved or that can only be addressed in the future when you have more information or different circumstances. This means focusing on today's challenges and opportunities while letting go of regret about past mistakes that can't be changed and anxiety about future scenarios that may never occur. Your emotional energy is most valuable when directed towards situations where action is possible and timing is right. The third guideline involves relationship reciprocity. Care deeply about relationships where the other person is also invested in mutual growth and well-being. Become strategically indifferent to relationships where your care isn't reciprocated or where the other person consistently takes more than they give. This doesn't mean becoming transactional about relationships, but it does mean recognizing when your emotional investment isn't creating value for either person. Sometimes caring less about someone creates space for them to care more about themselves, which can actually improve the relationship. The fourth guideline involves value alignment. Care about situations that align with your core values and support your long-term goals. Become indifferent to situations that conflict with your values or that distract from your important priorities. This might mean caring intensely about opportunities to develop skills that matter to you while becoming indifferent to social invitations that don't interest you. It might mean investing energy in causes you believe in while letting go of guilt about causes you don't feel called to support. The fifth guideline involves emotional sustainability. Care about things in ways that energize rather than drain you. When caring about something consistently leaves you feeling depleted, anxious, or resentful, it's usually a sign that your caring has become counterproductive. Sustainable caring involves finding ways to contribute to people and causes you value without sacrificing your own mental health or well-being. This might mean setting boundaries around how much time you spend helping others, or finding ways to support causes through actions rather than constant worry. Implementing these guidelines requires regular self-reflection and adjustment. Your circumstances, relationships, and priorities change over time, which means your applications of strategic indifference need to evolve as well. The goal isn't to develop rigid rules about what to care about, but to develop flexible wisdom that allows you to make conscious choices about your emotional investments based on current circumstances and long-term values. Common misunderstandings about strategic indifference. Many people resist developing strategic indifference because they misunderstand what it means or fear that it will make them cold, selfish, or disconnected. Understanding these misunderstandings is crucial for developing healthy applications of emotional regulation. The first misunderstanding is that strategic indifference means not caring about anything. In reality, strategic indifference allows you to care more deeply about the people and situations that truly matter by protecting your emotional resources from being drained by things that don't deserve your concern. When you stop caring about your ex-partner's social media posts, you have more emotional energy available for your current relationships. When you stop worrying about strangers' opinions, you can be more authentic and connected with people who actually know you. The second misunderstanding is that strategic indifference is selfish. While strategic indifference does involve prioritizing your own well-being, it often makes you more capable of helping others effectively rather than less caring about their needs. When you're not emotionally drained by caring about everyone's problems, you have more energy to provide meaningful support to people who are actually asking for your help. When you're not stressed about things beyond your control, you can be more present and helpful in situations where you can make a real difference. The third misunderstanding is that strategic indifference means suppressing emotions. Strategic indifference doesn't involve pushing down feelings or pretending you don't have emotional responses. Instead, it involves changing your relationship to emotions so that you can feel them without being controlled by them. You might still feel irritated when someone treats you rudely, but strategic indifference allows you to observe that irritation without letting it ruin your day. or control your responses. You can acknowledge the feeling while choosing not to invest significant mental energy in analyzing the other person's behavior or planning your revenge. The fourth misunderstanding is that strategic indifference makes you passive or unmotivated. In reality, strategic indifference often increases motivation and effectiveness by helping you focus your energy on areas where action can create positive change. When you stop caring about impressing people who don't matter to you, you might become more motivated to excel in areas that align with your values. When you stop worrying about potential failures, you might become more willing to take appropriate risks that could lead to growth and success. The fifth misunderstanding is that strategic indifference requires you to be perfect at emotional regulation. Many people avoid practicing strategic indifference because they think they need to master it immediately or apply it consistently in all situations. In reality, strategic indifference is a skill that develops gradually through practice and experience. You don't need to become perfectly indifferent to everything that doesn't matter. You just need to become slightly more selective about where you invest your emotional energy. Small improvements in emotional regulation compound over time into significant increases in well-being and effectiveness. The sixth misunderstanding is that strategic indifference means you can't be passionate or enthusiastic about anything. Strategic indifference actually enables deeper passion and enthusiasm by protecting your emotional energy from being scattered across too many concerns. When you care strategically, your enthusiasm isn't diluted by anxiety about irrelevant problems. You can be fully engaged with your interests, relationships, and goals because you're not constantly distracted by worry about things you can't control. Understanding these distinctions helps you develop strategic indifference in ways that enhance, rather than diminish, your humanity, relationships, and effectiveness in the world. Building emotional boundaries. Strategic indifference requires strong emotional boundaries. The ability to distinguish between your emotional experience and other people's emotional states, and to choose consciously how much emotional involvement to have in different situations. Many people struggle with emotional boundaries because they confuse empathy with emotional absorption. Empathy involves understanding and caring about other people's experiences while maintaining awareness of your own separate emotional state. Emotional absorption involves taking on other people's emotions as if they were your own, which often leads to feeling overwhelmed and drained. Building healthy emotional boundaries allows you to be empathetic and supportive without becoming emotionally destabilized by other people's problems or moods. You can care about someone's struggle without taking responsibility for solving it or for managing their emotional reactions. The first step in building emotional boundaries involves developing what psychologists call emotional awareness, the ability to notice your own emotional states and distinguish them from external circumstances. When you're emotionally aware, you can recognize when your feelings are responses to your own experiences versus reactions to other people's energy. This awareness develops through practices like mindfulness meditation, journaling, and regular check-ins with yourself about your emotional state. The goal is to become skilled at noticing what you're feeling and understanding what's causing those feelings. The second step involves emotional ownership. recognizing that you're responsible for your own emotional responses, while other people are responsible for theirs. This doesn't mean becoming insensitive to others' needs, but it does mean recognizing the limits of your emotional responsibility. You can support someone who's struggling without taking personal responsibility for their happiness or well-being. You can care about someone's success without feeling personally threatened by their failures. You can be disappointed by someone's behavior without taking it as a judgment of your worth. The third step involves selective emotional engagement, consciously choosing how much emotional energy to invest in different situations based on your values, priorities, and available resources. This requires developing comfort with the idea that you can't care equally about everything without depleting yourself. Selective emotional engagement might mean limiting how much time you spend listening to certain people's complaints while remaining fully available for friends who rarely ask for support. It might mean caring deeply about your family members' major life events while becoming indifferent to their daily dramas and conflicts. The fourth step involves emotional recovery practices, activities and habits that help you recharge your emotional energy and return to baseline calm when you've been emotionally activated. Without recovery practices, even strategic indifference can become exhausting because you're constantly managing your emotional responses. Emotional recovery might involve physical exercise, creative activities, time in nature, spiritual practices, or social connection with people who energize rather than drain you. The key is having reliable ways to restore your emotional equilibrium after dealing with challenging situations or people. The fifth step involves boundary communication, learning to express your emotional limits clearly and kindly without apologizing for having boundaries or feeling guilty about protecting your well-being. This might mean saying things like, "I care about what you're going through, but I don't have the emotional energy to discuss this right now," or "I want to support you, but I can't take responsibility for solving this problem." These communications maintain connection while protecting your boundaries. Building emotional boundaries is a gradual process that requires patience with yourself and others. People who are used to having unlimited access to your emotional energy might resist your boundaries initially, but maintaining them consistently usually leads to healthier, more sustainable relationships over time. The relationship between indifference and compassion. One of the most sophisticated aspects of strategic indifference involves learning to be simultaneously indifferent and compassionate, caring about people's well-being without becoming attached to specific outcomes or taking responsibility for their emotional states. This balance requires understanding the difference between two types of compassion: empathetic distress and empathetic concern. Empathetic distress involves feeling bad when others feel bad, which can lead to emotional overwhelm and burnout. Empathetic concern involves caring about others' well-being while maintaining emotional stability and clear thinking about how to help. Research shows that empathetic concern is more sustainable and often more helpful than empathetic distress. When you're emotionally regulated, you can think more clearly about how to support someone effectively. When you're emotionally activated by their pain, you're more likely to offer unhelpful advice or to make their situation about your own discomfort. Strategic indifference enables empathetic concern by preventing emotional overwhelm that interferes with clear thinking and appropriate action. You can care deeply about someone's struggle while remaining indifferent to whether they follow your advice, appreciate your help, or resolve their problems in the time frame you think would be best. This type of detached compassion is common among effective therapists, social workers, and other helping professionals who need to care about their clients without becoming emotionally destabilized by their clients' problems. They've learned to hold genuine concern alongside emotional boundaries that allow them to remain helpful rather than becoming additional casualties of the situations they're trying to address. Developing detached compassion requires practicing what Buddhists call loving kindness without attachment, genuinely wishing for others' happiness and well-being while accepting that you can't control whether they achieve it. You can offer support, resources, and encouragement while remaining emotionally indifferent to whether they accept your help or benefit from it. This practice often involves grieving the fantasy of being able to fix other people's problems through caring about them intensely. Many people unconsciously believe that if they worry enough about someone, they can somehow influence that person's choices or outcomes. Letting go of this fantasy can feel like abandoning someone, but it actually frees you to offer more appropriate and sustainable support. Strategic indifference also allows for what researchers call tough love, caring about someone enough to allow them to experience natural consequences of their choices, rather than rescuing them from difficulties they need to learn from. Sometimes the most compassionate response is to stop enabling someone's harmful patterns by removing your emotional investment from their drama. This doesn't mean becoming harsh or uncaring, but it does mean recognizing that constant worry and intervention can sometimes prevent people from developing the resilience and skills they need to handle their own lives effectively. The goal is developing what psychologists call wise compassion, caring that's informed by understanding of what actually helps people grow and thrive, rather than caring that's driven by your own emotional needs or discomfort with others' pain. Strategic indifference in different life areas. The application of strategic indifference varies significantly across different areas of life, and understanding these variations helps you implement this skill more effectively without causing problems in areas where care and engagement are essential. In professional contexts, strategic indifference often involves caring deeply about your own performance, growth, and contribution, while becoming indifferent to office politics, colleagues' personal dramas, and organizational changes beyond your influence. This allows you to maintain professionalism and effectiveness without becoming emotionally exhausted by workplace dynamics. You might care intensely about delivering excellent work while remaining indifferent to whether your efforts receive recognition or appreciation from supervisors. You might invest energy in developing skills that advance your career while letting go of frustration about company policies you can't change. However, professional strategic indifference requires careful balance. You need to care enough about relationships and team dynamics to be collaborative and effective, while not caring so much about others' opinions that you compromise your integrity or exhaust yourself trying to please everyone. In family relationships, strategic indifference often involves caring about family members' overall well-being while becoming indifferent to their daily choices, lifestyle decisions, and personal dramas that don't directly affect you. This can be particularly challenging because family relationships often involve long histories of emotional entanglement and unclear boundaries. You might care deeply about maintaining connection with family members while becoming indifferent to their political opinions, relationship choices, or career decisions. You might offer support during genuine crises while stepping back from involvement in recurring dramas or conflicts between other family members. Family strategic indifference often requires mourning the fantasy of having the perfect family where everyone makes choices you approve of and no one experiences problems you can't solve. This mourning can be painful, but ultimately leads to more authentic and sustainable family relationships. In romantic relationships, strategic indifference involves a more complex balance because intimate partnerships require high levels of mutual care and attention. However, even in close relationships, some applications of strategic indifference can improve rather than harm connection. You might care deeply about your partner's happiness and growth while becoming indifferent to their past relationships, their family's opinions about you, or their daily mood fluctuations that aren't related to your relationship. This allows you to be supportive without becoming anxious or controlling about things beyond your influence. Strategic indifference in romantic relationships also involves caring about the health of your relationship while becoming indifferent to how your partnership compares to others' relationships, or whether it meets external expectations about what relationships should look like. In social contexts, strategic indifference often involves caring about a smaller number of deeper friendships while becoming indifferent to social approval from acquaintances, social media engagement, or inclusion in every social event or group. This might mean investing significant energy in maintaining close friendships while letting go of concern about what casual acquaintances think of you. It might mean caring about hosting meaningful gatherings while becoming indifferent to whether you're invited to every party or social event in your community. Social strategic indifference can be particularly liberating because it frees you from the exhausting work of trying to manage your image or please people who don't significantly impact your life. This freedom often makes you more authentic and attractive in your genuine social connections. In health and self-care contexts, strategic indifference might involve caring intensely about behaviors you can control, like exercise, nutrition, sleep, and stress management, while becoming indifferent to health factors beyond your influence, like genetics, aging, or environmental toxins you can't avoid. This approach reduces health anxiety while motivating consistent healthy behaviors. You can pursue wellness without becoming obsessed with perfect optimization or anxious about every potential health risk you read about online. When strategic indifference goes wrong, like any psychological skill, strategic indifference can be misapplied in ways that create problems rather than solutions. Understanding these potential misapplications helps you avoid common pitfalls and develop this skill in healthy directions. The first common mistake is using strategic indifference as emotional avoidance, using not caring as a way to avoid dealing with legitimate emotions or responsibilities, rather than as a way to manage emotional energy more effectively. For example, someone might claim to be strategically indifferent to relationship conflicts when they're actually avoiding necessary conversations about problems that need attention. Or they might use indifference as an excuse to neglect important responsibilities because dealing with them feels uncomfortable. True strategic indifference enhances your ability to engage with important situations by protecting your emotional energy from irrelevant concerns. When indifference is used to avoid engagement altogether, it becomes a form of emotional withdrawal that can damage relationships and prevent personal growth. The second mistake is applying indifference too broadly, becoming emotionally disconnected from areas of life where care and engagement are essential for well-being and success. Some people overcorrect from caring too much about everything to caring too little about anything, which creates different but equally problematic consequences. You need to care about your health, your close relationships, your personal growth, and your contribution to the world. Strategic indifference should help you care more effectively about these important areas by eliminating drain from unimportant concerns, not by reducing your overall capacity for care. The third mistake is using strategic indifference as a form of superiority or judgment, becoming indifferent to others' concerns while maintaining a sense of being above their emotional reactions or problems. This version of indifference can become arrogant and disconnected from genuine compassion. Healthy strategic indifference involves understanding that you simply have limited emotional energy and need to allocate it wisely. It's not about being better than people who care about different things than you do, but about making conscious choices about your own emotional investments. The fourth mistake is expecting strategic indifference to eliminate all emotional discomfort or difficult feelings. Some people pursue indifference as a way to avoid ever feeling upset, disappointed, or hurt, which is neither realistic nor healthy. Strategic indifference helps you avoid unnecessary emotional suffering, but it doesn't prevent all emotional difficulty. You'll still experience sadness, frustration, and disappointment about things that matter to you. The difference is that these emotions won't be compounded by additional stress about things that don't matter. The fifth mistake is applying strategic indifference inconsistently, caring intensely about some things while claiming indifference about others in ways that don't align with your actual values or priorities. This inconsistency often reflects lack of clarity about what you genuinely care about, rather than successful emotional regulation. Effective strategic indifference requires honest self-reflection about your authentic values and priorities. You can't decide what to be indifferent about until you're clear about what deserves your care and attention. The sixth mistake is using strategic indifference to avoid accountability for the impact of your behavior on others. Some people claim not to care about others' reactions as a way to justify insensitive or harmful behavior, rather than as a way to protect themselves from excessive concern about others' opinions. True strategic indifference doesn't eliminate your responsibility to treat others with basic respect and kindness. It helps you distinguish between appropriate concern for others' well-being and inappropriate anxiety about their approval or emotional reactions. Recognizing these potential misapplications helps you develop strategic indifference in ways that enhance, rather than compromise, your relationships, responsibilities, and personal growth. Developing your personal practice. Strategic indifference is a skill that develops through consistent practice and conscious application. Like physical fitness or any other capability, it requires regular attention and gradual development rather than expecting immediate mastery. The first step involves developing clarity about your values and priorities through regular self-reflection. You can't apply strategic indifference effectively until you know what deserves your care and what doesn't. This clarity develops through practices like journaling, meditation, therapy, or regular conversations with trusted friends or mentors. Ask yourself questions like, what are the most important areas of my life? Which relationships deserve my emotional investment? What goals and values do I want to guide my decisions? What problems am I currently worried about that I have no ability to influence or solve? The second step involves practicing emotional awareness throughout your day. Begin noticing when you feel emotionally activated and ask yourself whether the situation deserves your emotional energy based on your values and priorities. This isn't about immediately changing your emotional responses, but about developing awareness of your emotional patterns and the triggers that tend to pull you into caring about things that don't serve your well-being. The third step involves experimenting with small applications of strategic indifference in low-stakes situations. Instead of trying to transform your entire emotional life at once, practice letting go of minor concerns like strangers' opinions, social media drama, or news about events you can't influence. Notice what happens when you consciously choose not to invest emotional energy in these smaller concerns. Do you feel guilty, relieved, anxious? Understanding your emotional reactions to strategic indifference helps you develop this skill more skillfully. The fourth step involves developing recovery practices that help you recharge your emotional energy when you do choose to care deeply about important situations. Strategic indifference is easier when you're not already emotionally depleted from previous caring. Find activities, relationships, and experiences that energize rather than drain you. This might include exercise, creative pursuits, time in nature, spiritual practices, or social connection with people who support your well-being. The fifth step involves learning to communicate your boundaries around emotional involvement in ways that maintain relationships while protecting your energy. This often requires practicing phrases like, "I understand this is important to you, but I don't have the emotional bandwidth to get involved," or "I care about you, but I can't take responsibility for solving this problem." The sixth step involves regular evaluation and adjustment of your strategic indifference practice. Your circumstances, relationships, and priorities change over time, which means your applications of strategic indifference need to evolve as well. Regularly ask yourself, is my current pattern of caring serving my well-being and my ability to contribute to the people and causes I value most? Are there areas where I'm caring too much about things that don't matter? Are there areas where I'm not caring enough about things that do matter? The seventh step involves developing patience with the learning process. Strategic indifference often feels unnatural at first, especially if you're used to caring intensely about everything. Your friends and family members might not understand your changes, and you might feel guilty about caring less, even when the caring was causing you stress without producing benefits. Remember that developing strategic indifference is an act of self-compassion that ultimately enhances your ability to care effectively about what truly matters. The goal isn't to become indifferent to everything, but to become wisely selective about your emotional investments. The liberation of strategic indifference. When you master strategic indifference, you discover a type of freedom that most people never experience. The freedom to engage fully with life while remaining untouchable by the chaos, drama, and emotional turbulence that exhausts so many others. This freedom doesn't come from having an easier life or avoiding all difficulties. It comes from developing sophisticated emotional regulation that allows you to navigate whatever life presents while maintaining inner peace and clear judgment about where to direct your energy and attention. People who have mastered strategic indifference often report feeling simultaneously more engaged and more peaceful than they did when they tried to care about everything. They have deeper relationships because they're not emotionally drained by superficial social concerns. They're more effective in their work because they're not distracted by office politics or others' opinions. They're more resilient during difficult times because they don't compound their challenges by worrying about things beyond their control. This mastery also creates what psychologists call emotional sovereignty. The ability to choose your emotional experience based on your values and priorities, rather than being emotionally reactive to whatever happens around you. You become the author of your emotional life rather than the victim of circumstances. Emotional sovereignty doesn't mean you never feel upset or challenged, but it means that your emotional responses are appropriate to actual circumstances rather than amplified by anxiety about irrelevant concerns. You can be sad about genuine losses while remaining unaffected by trivial disappointments. You can be angry about real injustices while staying calm about minor inconveniences. Strategic indifference also creates space for what philosophers call equanimity, a state of mental calmness and composure that remains stable regardless of external circumstances. Equanimity isn't emotional numbness or detachment. It's emotional balance that allows you to remain centered while fully engaging with whatever life presents. This equanimity makes you more attractive to others because people naturally gravitate toward those who seem genuinely peaceful and unshakable. Your strategic indifference becomes a gift to everyone around you because you provide stable, calm energy in a world where most people are emotionally reactive and anxious. But perhaps the greatest liberation that comes from strategic indifference is the discovery that you can maintain your humanity, compassion, and capacity for deep love while also protecting yourself from unnecessary suffering. You don't have to choose between caring and peace. You can have both when you learn to care wisely. The ultimate insight is that strategic indifference isn't about caring less. It's about caring better. When you stop wasting emotional energy on things that don't matter, you have more energy available for the people, goals, and values that do matter. When you're not constantly stressed about things beyond your control, you can be more present and effective in situations where you can actually make a difference. This is the art of strategic indifference, the sophisticated emotional skill that allows you to remain fully human while also being unshakable. It's not a withdrawal from life, but a deeper engagement with what makes life meaningful. It's not emotional numbness, but emotional wisdom. And once you taste this freedom, the freedom to care deeply while remaining untouchable by drama, the freedom to engage fully while maintaining inner peace, you'll understand why ancient philosophers considered strategic indifference one of the highest forms of wisdom, and why modern psychology recognizes it as essential for mental health and life satisfaction. You don't have to care about everything. You don't have to be affected by every piece of drama or criticism or chaos that swirls around you. You can choose where to invest your precious emotional energy. And that choice can transform not just how you feel, but how you live. That's the promise and the practice of strategic indifference. The art of caring wisely in a world that teaches you to care frantically about everything, all the time. Master this art, and you master one of the most important skills for thriving in modern life while maintaining your sanity, your relationships, and your capacity for genuine contribution to the world.